Okay, today on Taraj's Toolbox, we're gonna make a palate plaque out of some old wood fence pickets. So, I'm gonna show you how to make the plaque, and I'm gonna show you how to set up a jig so that you can cut out the pieces and nail them all together. So you gotta excuse. This is called the Oasis back here, y'all. But the tools you're gonna need for this job is a strip of wood to make your jig out of. Depending on what size your plaque is gonna be, that'll determine how big you wanna make your jig and how big of a table you're gonna need. You're gonna also either need a square like this right here, or you're gonna need like a drywall T-square, because you're gonna need that to properly line up your jig. You're gonna also need a miter saw, any brand to do. I got the Ryobi right here. So first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna start off by deciding how big we want our plaque to be. So by looking at this table, I probably want mine to be about this big because I got some pretty large size fence pickets, but it don't have to be that big, but this is how big I'm going to make mine. So we're going to mark it at 3 feet, which is right here. So we'll mark it right there. It don't have to be exact because this is my creation. But if you have to make yours a particular size, you want to pretty much mark it where it's supposed to be. So I already have a square piece of wood. This was an old door frame that came from a door factory. I'm in a door panel, door slab, whatever you want to call it. So it's already square on that side. So all I got to do is basically cut this wood, tack it down here, and I already have that part. So let's say you don't have a square, or you're not sure if the board is square. All you do is line it up with the edge like this, and you want to get a straight line, you just line it up with this part of the wood, and now it's pretty much straight. So all you have to do is just make a line going down, and you do the same thing for this part, lining up with the edge right here. Oops. There you go, and we got a straight line going down. See? Bum. So after you done that, well, after you've done that, done that. What kind of language is that, boy, you're speaking? So now the size that we need to cut our strips is at 20 3/4. So we're gonna need two 20 3/4 pieces. Right there, you got my little brother right there. He's over there. He think he's gonna build a monster over there on that table.
Monster coming soon.
He say it's coming soon. So we basically set up your miter saw. If you don't already have it set up, plug it up. Oh shit. Well, actually, we got motor parts over there. I'm gonna have to cut this on the ground over here. I don't want to get no sawdust in this motor. That's what you call being a considerate citizen, huh? So, I don't even remember what size it was, but 21 3/4. So you measure it out, 21. No, it was 20 3/4. So you go to 20. Where are we at? And 3/4. And if you guys have any questions, I know I'm probably rambling on, you can go ahead and leave a comment. Make sure you have your safety glasses on. when you're cutting wood or you're doing anything, because you only get one pair of eyes. They don't grow back if you cut them off or poke it out. Here we go. Boom. So now that you got that first piece cut, you just line it up. Make sure the ends match. I know a lot of you guys probably already know this, but this is just for the amateurs that might be watching. Just make sure that the ends match if you want to duplicate a part. And then you just mark it. Then you cut your second piece. And if you don't have a laser on your saw like I do, a way you can tell if you're making the cut on the right spot is just to let your blade down without cutting, without pressing the button. Just let it down, and if it sits on top of your line, then you're pretty much where you want to be. And if you got one that slides back and forth, you could pretty much see where you're cutting. You know what I'm saying? So I'm pretty much where I want to be, so I make the cut. So after you got your two pieces cut out, you want to pretty much line it up onto your work piece. Y'all gotta excuse me, my mic is falling all out. So you line it up on your work piece from top to bottom. Now this is not that crucial because it's just a plaque that I'm making. But if you're doing something else that's going to require a precise measurement, you want to make sure that it's lined up properly, because if it's not, then your jig is not going to work properly. So after I got it where I want it, it's lined up on the top and the bottom, I'm just going to pretty much nail it to the wood. And now I got one side of my jig done. Now I just line up the edge with the edge of that on the other side of the piece of wood. Make sure it's flush on the side. You see how it's flush right there? Boom, flush. It's necessary. So once you got it flush, pretty much done. So this is pretty much the jig. This is what's going to allow us to keep our boards and everything together as we're building our plaque. So we're going to need one more piece to this jig, and that's going to be a spacer, so we could have the same spacing between each board. So the way we make a spacer is we just take a piece of the same material, and this one might do. It's best to have it the same width, so therefore there's no room to be out of adjustment, you know what I'm saying, because you got it the same width. So I'm just going to cut a piece at the same width as our template here, and I'm using a crack board because so I'm just going to line it up right here, make sure it's resting on there, and then I want to get it as snug as possible back here. So that's where I'm going to be that's where I'm going to make my cut at. Now you could use anything as a spacer. It's going to be up to you, depending on how thick you want the spaces to be, or if you don't want it to have no spaces. If you don't want it to have no spaces, then you just butt your boards up and you're pretty much good that way. So this is how it is. Okay, battery died. But once you made your jig, you got everything pretty much tight. Now you got to measure the distance between each one of these strips that you put on here, because this is going to be the area where you're going to lay your pieces of picket at, and it's going to keep your picket straight. So we're at 33 3/4, which is right here. Is that 3/4? Yeah, I need a new tape measure. 33 3/4. So each one of the boards that I cut is going to be 33 3/4. So you're going to take your tape measure, and you can cut all these boards at one time. Measure it at 33 3/4, which is right here. In my case, my miter saw is I think it's a 12-inch blade on here, but I could pretty much stack some pieces of wood on here at one time and create, dang, these boards is really cracked up, and create, I need more boards. But what I'm gonna, dang, this is really bad. But even if the board is cracked, you can still use it because there's gonna be a strip of wood behind it that holds all the pieces together. So we're gonna, now let me just go and get another piece. See, I'm trying to take a shortcut, y'all, instead of doing it the right way. So I'll be right back. So this is where we gotta make our cut at. Keep that over on that pile. And we're gonna go get some good wood. These right here, 2 cracks. We could probably make some smaller ones with that. But for the demonstration, we gotta keep going with what we have. So I'm gonna find me some good pieces of wood that ain't cracked that bad. So we got 1. Look like we probably need like 4 of them probably. And it's okay if the wood have knots in it because that kind of gives it that rustic look. This one is not the same. All right, so we'll use these. Hey, Mom. People on YouTube, say hello. They're on the camera.
Hello.
I'm full of it, wow. My mom says I'm full of it. So, what we'll do first is we're gonna cut the first piece that we need. Dang, this is a big old hole in it. But we'll cut this first piece, and just like I said, if you don't have the laser, you can pretty much line it up with the blade by just putting it down on your piece without pressing the button. So we're gonna make our first cut. Make sure you don't cut your fingers off. So after you make your first cut, and you got it the length that you need. So if you got the pickets that have a dog ear on it, you could cut that off. But if you choose to use that in your design, you could do it that way too. But we cutting that off. I don't want that in design. I just want a straight picket. So I'm just gonna cut off. And whenever you got a piece that's really close to the blade, do not put your finger there and try to cut it, because what'll happen is this piece of wood, it could kick back and it'll flip. And when you have your finger on it, and if it flip, your finger will go right into the blade and it'll chop it right off. I had that happen to me one time, but luckily I didn't let my finger go all the way through it. But it's possible, man. You gotta be careful. These power tools ain't no joke. You could lose fingers, you could lose a hand, you could lose a head, and an eyeball. But once you got that cut off, I'm gonna pretty much line it up on here like this, and I'm gonna stack them so I don't have to make so many cuts. So this is how you do it. This one got a big old hole in it. So any pieces that you have big holes in it, you could just cut it off. And you just start your cut from this point. So when you put it on top of each other, make sure it's even, like that. Same thing with this one. Make sure it's even, like that. Because if you make these too long, it's not gonna fit inside the jig. And you're gonna have to go back to the saw and make another cut. So to avoid all those trips to the saw, we just gonna make sure that it's cut right. But sometimes you just have to come and make another trip to the saw anyway, because for some reason the saw likes to play tricks sometimes. No matter how good or perfect of a carpenter or a hobby wood person you are, you're never perfect. So I got all the things lined up. Now, when you're making cuts, you got to make sure that your piece is lined up on the fence. This fence helps you to keep your cut straight. If it's not on the fence properly, or all the way or flush to the fence, you're gonna have a crooked cut. So just make sure that you have it up against the fence and push back all of your boards, okay? And then we're gonna cut all these boards at the same time. So make sure that your blade is right at the edge, which is like right there. And you can see it's not all the way on the fence. We gotta fix that. So we bump it up again, okay? And then once you get it there, you cut, make your cut. Perfect example. As you see, a piece of wood just flew off of there and the whole wood piece shifted a little bit. Like if my finger was there close to that blade, it would have went into the blade. Could have cut my finger off. So just make sure you be careful. So once you got the pieces cut, now this is where you're gonna put it into your jig. And the pieces go in your jig like this. And this is what's gonna keep them square while you screw them in. And remember, the first thing we did was create a spacer, but I can't even find that spacer no more. But anyway, the spacer was like this. It was that long piece that we created in the beginning. But you use that if you want your gaps to be equal. So you just bump up the pieces. Oh, each piece that you do, you can bump it up so that you have the same amount of space between each board. It'd be good if I had a hammer out here, but I don't have a hammer. But if you have a good eye, you don't need a spacer. You can just pretty much eyeball it. But I kind of like it better all together with a small little space. So I'm changing up my plan right now. And that kind of happens sometimes when you're putting stuff together. Like you might plan to do it one way, and as you're building it, you come up with a better idea. And I kind of like how it looks, like if I tilt it a little bit, you have a little space right there and a space like there, because wood is not even or 100% straight unless you cut it on the table saw and you got some good wood. So right now in this case, we're using recycled wood that came off of a fence and had been sitting outside for a little while. And some of the wood is kind of warped, you know, and some of the wood have knots in it and the edges are not completely straight. So I'm not going to be able to get a perfect line between each gap. So I'm happy with it not being completely 100% straight. So once you get it lined up the way you want it to be, so pretty much put it in your jig, butt them up together. Yeah, I kind of like it like this. I don't want to have big gaps in it. But you line it up like that, and now you need a piece to hold them together. So you could either get a separate piece of wood like this, or you can use a scrap piece of the wood that you already have, and you can just make it go the full length of the entire plaque, and you can hold it together that way. So in this case, I'm going to just use the scraps that I already have. And the scraps don't even have to be perfectly cut. I mean, this is the back of the picture, so nobody will never see it. And you can hang a hook or something right there on the wall, so they don't have to be perfectly straight, and you can use cracked pieces. But in this case, I'm gonna just use a straight piece. So this top piece is what I'm gonna use, and you could either measure it or you could just mark it out If you're not too familiar with using a tape measure, I recommend that you just mark it out, because when you mark it out, you can't go wrong. So I'm just gonna mark it out. And we're gonna make 2 pieces. One piece is gonna go here. No, we're actually gonna make 3. 1 here, 1 here, 1 here. 2 on the side, 1 on each side, and 1 in the middle. So we're gonna cut it out. It don't have to fit flush on both sides. Just make sure that it's the whole width of the piece. Okay? So you're going to duplicate the same piece 2 more times. So we marked it. I should have just stacked them, but oh well. Cut it. Can you do it one more time? Stack them up, make it even. Draw that line. Put it flush on the fence. Line it up, tap it out, then you cut. Now once you got the 3 pieces, you got a choice. You could either screw it, glue it. Actually, probably not. Oh, actually, we probably will. Well, not. Because I don't have the bit. So, that's what I really hate about. Oh, here we go. Good job. What company is this? Grip Right. They actually supply you with the bit. So, I'm gonna be able to put this baby into my ratchet and screwdriver. And we're gonna screw these things in here manually. Hey, that's fun. Cause I'm too lazy to go and find the bit that goes in my drill. So you just pretty much screw it in. I guess this would be good for you do-it-yourselfers that don't own a drill. You can pretty much use a screwdriver or a ratchet and screwdriver to make it work. This is the Milwaukee ratchet and screwdriver. It didn't come with a hex head, but the screws came with one, so that's a good thing. So you pretty much screw it on there, each piece. See how quick that was? That wasn't bad. And I really hate doing stuff manually. I'm spoiled by technology and battery operated tools, so this is not too bad. Pretty tight. So you're gonna have to put a screw in each one of these boards. See? 1, 2, 3. See? 1, 2, 3, 4. Can't count. So you put it on there. I ain't gonna lie, y'all, my wrist getting tired. This is a muscle that I don't use often. As you can see, it's pulling the wood up. Here we on there. As you can see up underneath here. Sorry guys, my camera battery died on me. So I'm back again. Putting in my 4th screw. What size screw are these? These are 1 1/4 inch screws. Okay, now we got all 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right. So now we need to do the same thing on the other two. Oh, don't need to take out that many screws. Okay, same thing on the other two. So I'm gonna speed up the video right quick. So don't you guys think I'm working at Superman pace. Oh, I'm getting tired with this. Ugh. Okay. You'll get some big forearms and biceps doing this. Look at that. I can feel the burn. Don't need a gym membership if you're doing this kind of work manually. Okay, 2 more to go. As you can see, I'm going at an angle because I don't want the screw to pop out on the other side. But if you got short screws, you don't have to worry about it. Just want to make sure that it catches the board underneath it and pulls it to the brace. Okay. All right. Whew. Now we're done. Feel like I done had a workout. So once you got all the screws in, now you can pretty much lift it up out of your jig. And now you have your plaque. And as you can see, my screws were a little bit too long. So you could use something to cut those screws off or just get you the right size screws. But I'm just doing this for a demonstration. If I was doing this to sell it or something, I would go and purchase the right size screws, or maybe use some staples or something. But that's how you do that. All right, so that concludes this video. Maybe I'll show another video where I'm actually doing some kind of artwork on the front of this. But I just want to show you guys how to do this at home. You don't have to go to the store and actually buy this. You can actually use recycled pieces of fence pickets and create your own palate plaque. All right, so if you guys have a multi-tool, these could be cut off with that. You could use wire cutters or a grinder, you know, Or you could just use a thicker piece of wood on the back. You know, so that's that. I want to thank you guys for watching. Make sure that you subscribe and be easy.